Okay, so I'm going to make a new family, and this time I'll set up all the parameters for it to work in both Revit and then also when we're taking 3ds Max. So the one I did last week, I think it was just the joinery, and I didn't do any parameters really, did I? It was just the modelling. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'll go through the modelling fairly quickly, but as I do it, I'll do the parameters and I'll do that a bit more slowly. So, so I'm just going to go make a new file, and then family. Now, I'm pretty sure the one I did last week with the joinery was casework. I did for the category.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure. So, yeah. So I did casework because that shows cut in sections, essentially. All right. So you want things like kitchen cabinets and built-in units to show that way when they're cut in a section view. But you don't want other furniture like workstations and chairs and tables to show that way in section. You want them just to show in elevation, even if they're being cut by a section line. Yeah, just bad presentation to show them. Exactly, yeah, that's right. You're not designing those things, they're not part of the construction. So, so here, when I go to make a new family, it's really important that I choose metric furniture. And so you won't need to do what I'm doing now. It'll take you straight into your... so I'm going to go into my... I've got...
Which one's better, metric or generic?
it depends what you're doing. Oh, the generic one is metric. So metric generic model, it's good if you're not sure. So I'm just finding it here. There it is. Okay, so it's good if you're not sure, but it's better if you know what it is to choose that category. So so look, I'll just start one with metric furniture, and then I'll come back and I'll show you why or how you can work it out. Yeah, sure.
I went to do create I used to be able to do an angular plane.
Yeah.
I went to use front view.
Yep.
And I used to be able to do it, but I just haven't done it in a while. It doesn't work.
Okay, and I'll show you. I'll do something like that in this family. Yeah, no problem. So, okay, so the I'm in the family file. But I'm just going to use Control-Tab to switch back to that project file, so I can show you the object styles, and you'll see maybe why I chose furniture as the category. Okay, so here you can see the line weights. And so you might not know what these numbers mean, but basically they're from light to heavy. So pen 1 is the lightest, pen 2 the next lightest, and so on. So pen 4 is actually a fairly heavy pen. So things like floors, when they're being cut, are fairly heavy, but in projection they're light. Okay, so that makes sense. And other things when they're being cut, like doors, are heavier than when they're in projection, but not as heavy as floors. So again, that makes sense. But notice how things like furniture don't even have an option for cut. So they always show with the lighter line weight, which is good. And they don't show being cut at all. So they'll just show as if they're being viewed from the side, even if the section line's going through them. So there are lots of things like this, not just furniture, lots of other things as well. Parking, you wouldn't want that to be cut either. So whereas generic models will show cut, so they're just like casework. So it often comes down to the way you want them to display, but it's good to have them categorized in the right way as well. So when you turn your furniture off, all of the families you've made that are in that category get turned off as well. Okay, so I'm in the project file. Now again, I'm going to use Control-Tab to switch to different views. Now I've got quite a few views open in this file. So I'm going to go to the View tab and then Close Hidden. Okay, so now again, Control-Tab, and it will take me straight back into my family file because I've only got one view open from each file. If you're not sure how many views are open, you can always go to the View tab and then Tile or something like that, and that will show you all the open views. Double click on the title to maximize it again, and we're back into the normal plan view to start drawing the workstation. All right, so I'm going to set up a desktop first, and so before I even draw the desk, I'm going to set up the sizes. So I want this to be an adjustable workstation. I'm going to have adjustable sizes and adjustable materials. So I'm going to set all of that up as I go. And so on the Home tab, I'm I'm going to go and draw a reference plane either side of the centre line. Now, it looks like I'm going to go fairly quickly through this, but I'll be repeating the process. You'll see I'll do this quite a few times with different objects. So I'm going to draw, like I said, 2 vertical reference planes either side. So one to the left, one to the right of that centre line now. So I'm just going to start that one again because I'm fussy and I want it to line up with the first one. So you can see I'm just getting the dashed lines to line up the ends. I'm not worried about the spacing though. And then before I do the next reference planes, I'll go and dimension these using an aligned dimension. I'm just going to go from the first reference plane to the centre line and then to the last one, place it above, and then from the first to the last. Oops, from the first to the last, or last to first, doesn't matter. And then again, place it above. I might just move them up a little bit more. Okay, so now I'm going to select the first row of dimensions I drew and set them to be equals. So I've got them centered over my center line. And now I'm going to select the second dimension I drew and go to label and add parameter. So this is how you set a width. So I'm going to call this width, or you could call it length. Confusing, I know, deciding which way width goes, which way length and depth and breadth go. There are no real rules there. Some people will tell you it's always length by breadth, but you know, again, which way is breadth? So wide should be the wider side usually, but then length is often the longer one. So you've just got to decide which way you're going to go. And here I would always say width is the wider way, depth is coming away from you in Y, and then height is coming up. And that's why I always do it. In Revit, they use slightly different terms, so you've just got to remember that. All right, so I've got width here anyway. Decide on the terms you want to use, and then I'll draw some more reference planes above and below this horizontal centre line. And so again, I'll draw my dimensions from the first to the centre to the last, place it to one side, and then from the first to the last, again to one side. So now again, I can select my first dimension, set it to be equals, select the second one, set it to add a parameter. And then this one will be depth. Okay, so notice we can see the sizes there, but I can't adjust them by clicking onto the dimensions. If I try to type in there, oh no, sorry, it will let me at the moment actually, but I don't want to do it that way. I want to show you another way. In family types. So you'll see on the Revit, whether you're on the Modify tab or the Home tab, you'll get that Properties panel with family types. And this is your main dialog box when you're working in a family. You may not have used it yet, but once you start working with parameters and other things, this is the main dialog box you'll be working in. Okay, so remember that one, family types. And then you can see here we've got those 2 parameters that I've made. So width, I'll change that to something else. Let's try, I don't know, 1500. And then apply, and I should see it change in the viewport. Depth, let's try something else again. So let's try 900. Again, apply, and you can see that changing.
Can you click on reference plane and change the numbers there?
No, can't do that anymore. No. So that's called flexing, and it's just a way of testing out the things that you've done, the parameters. It's really important to do that all the way along as you add parameters, just to check out whether they're working or not.
You can.
So you can do that in AutoCAD as well? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, see, AutoCAD has a similar system of parameters. Yeah.
So when you import this measurement to CAD dimension, will it change there? Or
Oh, the dimensions will come in, but the parameters won't.
you have to?
Yeah, so if you want to do parameters in AutoCAD, you've got to set them up again there. Yeah, it's a bit painful. So anyhow, though, this will work now with my Revit solid. So I'm going to go and draw an extrusion using the rectangle tool, and I'm just going to snap to the intersections of these reference planes to draw my 2 points for my rectangle, and then, this is the most important bit, lock all 4 of them. Okay, if you click to one side after you do that, you'll lose the lock symbol, so make sure you do it right away. And so there we are. Now I'm going to just finish that solid, finish that extrusion, and look at it in a 3D view. Okay, so there it is. If you can't see it, you can always right click and zoom to fit. And then I'm going to orbit. Again, I just did it with the cube so you can see it on the screen. I normally use a shortcut. Zoom to fit, and again, we can see that. So now I'll go back into family types and again flex it. So I'm going to change this width to something else. Let's try 2400 or something. Apply. You can see the box changing. The depth, again, I'll try something else. Let's try 1500. Apply, and again, I can see it changing. So I know the solid is tied to my reference planes. Okay, now I've set the width and the depth, but what about the height? Okay, so this is my desktop. I want it to be, set above the ground. So in my front view, I can see the height. Now, you can't make levels in a family. You've got a level there, but that's not a normal level. That's a reference level, and it's really to relate this family to the level that you place it on in your project. Okay, so that's not a normal level. You can't do anything with it. To set heights in families, you just use reference planes, like you would in plan. So otherwise, though, it's very similar to working with levels. So I'm going to draw a reference plane here, just going straight across, and I'm going to hit escape a couple of times right away so I can come back and select that reference plane, and I'm going to give it a name. So I'm going to call this desktop, and you'll see the name should come up in the viewport. Okay, so I can see that there. And now I won't change the height, I'll do that in a minute. So now I'm going to draw a dimension from that ref level to the reference plane. Again, place it to one side, and again, cancel, so I can select my new dimension, go to label, add parameter, and then I'll call this height, or I should really call it desk height because there'll be things above this. And that's it. So I'll just point out one thing here. If you're not sure, don't change it to instance. Leave it on type. And now I want to set the top of the desk to match that reference plane. So I'm just going to select the solid and then stretch it using the arrows so that it highlights the reference plane. And then when you let go, you'll get the padlock, lock that, and now the top is locked to the reference plane. But remember, this is a desktop, so I want the bottom to be set down from that, so I've got a thickness that stays the same. So to do that, I need to bring, firstly, the bottom up a little bit. So it's just a little trick, just bring it up away from the level so that you've got something to work with. And you'll see in a moment why. Because now I'm going to draw a new dimension from this reference plane, not from the top of the solid, so that really is important. Okay, so there I'm highlighting the solid, which happens to be in line with the reference plane, but I don't want that. I want the reference plane, and then to the bottom of the solid. Okay, so now I'm going to place that to one side. Okay, so hopefully you can see the chain of references there. It's going from the reference level to the desk height up to here, and then from there, it'll measure down to the bottom of the desk. Okay, so the order matters. All right, so here I can just go again and select this dimension to add parameter, and then I'll call this one thickness. All right, so again, I'll leave that on type, okay, and now to adjust that, again, I'm going to go to family types, and you can see here, there's my thickness parameter, so I can adjust that and make it, let's just make it 20 or 25. And then the desk height, I'll just make that 750 or 700, 750. Okay, so you can see those things have both gone in. And again, if I go into a 3D view, even though I can't see any of those reference plane or levels, I know if I go and adjust those values, I'm just going to change the height and the thickness there. So I'll change the height to, I don't know, 700 or something. And you can see the whole thing moving down. So you just want to keep checking those things as you go. Because now I can do a lot of extra components that are dependent on those parameters that I've set up. So I'm going to go back into plan and make some more extrusions. So again, just with the rectangle tool, I'm going to click onto the corner there, and then up to the top edge. I'm not worrying about the width. I'll come back and do that, but here it's really important that I do snap to that top edge, just somewhere. So that way, you can see I've got the 3 padlocks, so I can lock the 3 sides that are on the edge of the desk already, but this one last side that isn't, I need to do that a different way. Okay, so remember I made the thickness parameter already for the desk thickness.
So we always have to lock.
We'll lock it to things that it needs to be locked to, so just think about where it needs to be locked and where it doesn't. So here I can draw a new dimension now from this edge. Now again, remember I've got the reference plane along that edge. So it's always best to get the first reference. The reference plane is the thing that has the width set to it. It's the element setting the width essentially. So where you can, you want to tie as many things to that reference plane, not to things that get their location from the reference plane, if that makes sense. So this line here, it's going to move with the reference plane, but it's looking to the reference plane to find out where it should be. So you don't want to, I'm going to link something else now to my width. So I don't want to link it to the line, which then links to the reference plane. I just want to link it straight to the reference plane. Okay, so that's what I'm choosing now. So from the reference plane to the line on the edge here is where I want that thickness. Place this to one side, and now again I can come out and select that dimension and then just choose thickness. I don't need to make a new parameter because I've got that one already. Okay, and so over here I can do another one. So I'll just do a second extrusion. Again with rectangle, locking the 3 sides, and then with the dimension tool again, I'll draw from the reference plane to the line on the inside, place the dimension to one side, come back to select it, and then again set it to be thickness. Okay, so I'll just finish that solid, and then in the front elevation again, you can see that the height hasn't been set. So all I need to do there is select the solid that's right, and then stretch it using the grip at the top or the arrow, and then highlight the bottom edge of the desk, and again lock it to that. Now again, the other side, same thing. Select it, stretch it, lock it. Now on the in the 3D view, you can see, very basic desk I know, but all of that is tied together with those parameters. So if I go into family types now, I can set a different width. So let's go back to say 1500, apply, and the legs and the desk all go together. The depth as well, I'll just change that to something else. Apply, and you can see again the legs and the desk all go together. Also the thickness, so remember that's all tied. So if I go and change that to something else, let's go to say 40. Apply, the desk and the legs all change. So you can get a lot out of just one family if you set up the parameters in the right way. So I'll put some chairs and things in with this later, but now what I want to do is put materials onto that are also adjustable. Okay, so now I'm going to select, I'll just do all 3 solids because they probably would all have the same material here, and I'll do a screen afterwards that will have a different material. So just with those 3 extrusions selected, in properties now you can see I've got a material parameter or property, and I'm just going to first click where it's got by category and browse to assign a default material essentially. So this is like a starting material. Whenever I bring this family into a project, this is what it's going to start with. And so I'm going to just duplicate any material that it's already got selected. And I'll call this, well, let's give it a proper name. So it would be really timber, but you know, in reality, you know, some sort of particle board or melamine or something like that. So, but really it's timber or wood. So I'll just put wood, and it's going to be a laminate, I suppose. So let's just put laminate. Okay, so that's my default material, and then in appearance, I'll set a quick render appearance for that material. So just under plastic, find some sort of basic laminate, that'll do. And then back to graphics, just going to set a shading color. And, well, it's not going to be cut anyway. Remember, it's a furniture family, so there's no point even setting a cut pattern for this. Alright, so that's it. It's maybe a bit dark though, so I can lighten that shading color a little bit. Okay, so now those solids all have that material. We can't see it because it's on hidden line, but if I go to shaded, you can see the colors change. So now I'm going to again select all three solids and assign a parameter. So you can see here next to the material name, you've got this little button, and people often click on that thinking that's how you assign materials. But of course you'll see when you do click on it, it's not for that, it's for adding parameters. So I'm going to click on that button, and you can see it's got a button to add a parameter. And we're going to call this desk material. And again, I'm going to leave it on type. Okay, so I'm just going to click OK. And now you can see if I select any of these solids, that material is no longer adjustable. So I can't click there to change it anymore. That's why if you're going to set a default material, do it first before you assign the parameter. Okay, because now to change the parameter, I need to go to family types, and you can see there it is. So there's my desk material, and I can change it here to anything else, but I'm not going to. So I'm just going to leave it with the with that material, and I'm going to do one last thing though before I load it to the project. I'm going to go to the Manage tab, and then I'm going to go to Object Styles. And so remember before, in the object styles I showed you, you had a big long list of all your categories. So you had doors, walls, windows, everything. That was in a project file. And so really, object styles in Revit are your layers. You'll hear people say, oh, there's no layers in Revit. And even in the help menu, they'll say, Revit doesn't use layers. It's complete rubbish. They use layers. They just call them object styles. Okay, so you'll see when you look at the properties in your object styles, they're actually exactly the same as what you have for layers. Color, line pattern is your line types, so whether they're dashed or not. And then line weight is exactly the same as line weight in AutoCAD. Okay, so exactly the same properties. They are your layers. But in your families, you'll often only see one or two of those layers or object styles. That's because you can only work with the one category. So what do you do if you want to add new layers or new object styles? You can't add categories, but you can add subcategories. And that's the secret to working with object styles. So here you can see you've got this new button for modify subcategories. So I'm just going to click on that, and we'll call it office furniture. Office furniture, something. Okay, so this will be all my office furniture in a subcategory within furniture. Let's make it a proper name. Okay, office furniture. Okay, so now I can just click OK, and then selecting my units, I can then down here set this subcategory office furniture. Okay, so that's something you might not have done before, but really useful once you start doing that. Okay, so now I'm going to go and save as family, and I'll just put it in here, I suppose. So let's call it workstation type 1 or something. Alright, so now I'm going to load this into a project and show you how those parameters will work. So I've got no sizes set up at the moment, so just make sure you realise that. If I look at family types, there's nothing up here, which means there are no types. So I'm going to load into project. And well, firstly, you can see it's taking me back into a perspective view, so it won't let me place it. If I go to level 1, then because it was the last family I'd loaded, I can always just click on the component tool and it will take me straight back to that family I was just loading. So don't worry if that happens to you, you can always just go back to component. So I'm going to place this just roughly, and I want to pick up a different angle, so there we go. That'll do. Okay, so I've got my my unit in there, and so we can see that really clearly there. And so now I can select it, and then looking at edit type, see all those parameters. Okay, so that's how you make your materials and other things accessible within the project. If you don't do that, you've got to go back to the family each time and select each solid and assign the materials there, which is pretty tedious. But now, because I've just assigned that parameter to those 3 solids, I can easily now change all of their materials by simply changing this. And now, it's not a good idea to change the wood laminate material because I know that's set to be grey back in the family. So instead I'm going to make a new one by duplicating this, and then I'll call it laminate, I don't know, red. And then I can change the appearance. So that'll do. Change the shading colour, that'll do. Okay, so that all changes. Also, if I want to turn just the desks off, but not my other furniture, I can go to the visibility graphics setting for this layer, or for this view, sorry, and then you'll see in the furniture category now, click on the plus, and there's my office furniture category that I just marked. Okay, so I can turn just that off. So I turn off all my desks or something else. So that's a really useful thing as well. Okay, so back into here to turn it on. Okay, so notice, the other furniture, so the shelves, they're furniture as well, but they're not gone.
Why can't you use hide object just down the bottom?
You could, but that would hide just that one object. But what if you wanted to hide all the desks?
Yeah, but you can hide possible.
You'd have to select every desk though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So now I'll just maybe do a bit of nesting, and then we can take that through into another program. So I'll just go back to the family. So just with Control Tab, or I'll show you another way, just so that you maybe pick up a couple of other things. If I select this desk, I should be able to go back to the family by just clicking Edit Family, right? If I click Edit Family on the ribbon. But you've probably noticed it's gone quite often when you're working in perspective views. So just remember that when you select a family and you want to do things to it in a perspective view, you won't have a lot of the options, but you can easily just switch to a different view, either a default 3D view or a plan, and then you'll get the Edit Family option. Yeah, the Broadway, yep. Okay, so I'm back to the family file, and so now I can add a few things. So actually, I'll do this in plan. So say you wanted a chair to go with this desk. It's best to nest it with that family. So you can do this with your own families that you've made, and just think about how you want to break them up. So, back on the Home tab, so you can just go to Component. And here it's telling me there's no family loaded, so I have to go straight to loading one right away. I'm going to say yes, I do want to load. And I'll just go to the standard library, and so in here I should have some office chairs. So that'll do. Okay, so I can just place this now with the unit, save the file, load it back in, and I'll get an option to override. So I'm just going to choose the second option there. Back into my perspective, and you can see it comes in with the chair, and so that's much better than placing the chairs individually for each unit, and so you can have different configurations of chairs and just save them as different families, and it makes it much easier to manage. And then I can have lots of variations, so different sizes, and they'll all have the chair now. So if I do it in here, it'll work, but I'll show you a better way. So if I select that family and go to edit type, I can put in my widths and depths there. I really should have made that length. Anyhow, width and depth. And that'll work, but it's a much better way, I think, to do it in the family when you can. So again, to get the family, edit family button, I've just got to switch to a different view. Edit family takes me back to the file. And so I've just got to think about the standard sizes I might want for this desk. And while I'm at it, I can move the chair back. There we go. Still not far enough. There we go. Okay, so going into my family types now, I'm going to make some new family types. So even though I've been working in family types, you can see this is called family types, I actually don't have any types yet. So I'm going to click new, and my first type, I suppose, we'll make it this small one, so 1500 by 1000. Okay, so that's already the size that I've got, so I don't need to change this. I'm going to click new again to make another one. So we'll make it, say, 2400 by, should be a bit deeper as well, so by 1500 or by 1250. I'm trying to remember the standard sizes. Yeah, that'll be about right. Okay, so I'm going to hit apply so I can see that change. And, oh sorry, I've given the new name, but I didn't put those values in. So here we go, 2400 for the width and 1250 for the depth. Apply, and there we go, I can see the change. Now notice how it's intersecting with the chair now. So that's a good opportunity for me to adjust it. Now, you'll see later on, it's not hard to set the chair out from this edge. And actually, no, I'll show it to you right now. It's not that hard to show that to you. So the chair there is, I think, pretty close to being in the right position. Let's just see. Yeah, that's pretty good. So back in plan now, I'm going to draw a dimension from this edge to just somewhere on the chair. There we are. So it's got a nice center line built into it, and most families will. And then I'm just going to place this to one side and lock it. So the chair is always going to be fixed to that edge now. So if I come back to the 3D view, you'll see if I go to my family types, I don't need to type in new sizes. I'm just going to go to the list there and choose my other size. Apply. Notice how the chair moves with it this time. So again, I'm going to just load that back into my project now. So I'll save this file, load into project, and then this time, again, choose the second option, override existing version and parameter values. Back into my 3D view, you can see it's got the change, but the material that I assigned before isn't there because I overrode the parameter values. So that's why it's often, if you can, a good idea to put as much of this as you can in the family file, but then with things like materials, you'll often want to be doing that in the project, so you just got to live with the fact that they'll get overwritten sometimes. So here, if I choose my material, I can always choose the one I've made. So that material, laminate red, was made in the project, so it'll always be there. Okay, so there's my change, and notice how if I go to the drop-down list, I've got my new sizes. So again, it's going to go back to the original material because the parameter is tied to the type. So it's changing the size, that's fine. And so, as you saw then, I can always go to the type in here and change that parameter. But that's pretty tedious if I've got to go and do that for each one. So again, it can be better to do that back in the family. So I'll just quickly show you what I mean by that. So, so I deselected it. So I've got my family selected now. If I go to a different view, I can click on Edit Family. Okay, so I can, in family types, set one of these sizes to be a certain material. So I can say, okay, the 2400 by 1250, it's green. So I've got wood laminate. I'm going to make this wood laminate green. Change the colour. To any green plastic will do. That'll do. Okay, so that means that this size is green, but the other one is still the original material. Okay, so back into family types, if I change it to the smaller size, it'll also go back to being the different material. So that's what it means when you make a parameter. I'll just show you again in here. When you make a parameter and set it to type, that means the parameter belongs to the type or the name that we're giving for that size. When you set it to instance, then you can do it by element, and that's the last thing I'll show you. So, okay, so back into the project, if I load this back in now, okay, so you'll see it's going to work a little bit differently. I'm going to go to the 3D view. Oops, this one. Okay, so this family now, you can see it's got this larger size, which is automatically green. The smaller size, which is the original grey material. But then notice there's also workstation type 1. That's there for when I loaded it without any types. So it's going to be the red, because I set that in the project. So I've got those 3 types, all with different materials. Okay, so when you're working with a big project, that's the best way to do it, because you're managing large groups of objects globally and just changing a few settings somewhere to set things for, you know, a whole range of objects. But quite often you just want to customize materials on the fly for individual objects. So in other words, select the things you want to change and just set it directly. And so to do that, there's one last thing. Oops, sorry, I want to go to this view. So I'm just going back to the family. And then in the properties for each of these objects, in family type, I'm just going to find that desk material parameter. And then you can go to modify and change it. So before I said always set it to type, but this one I'm going to change to instance. And you'll see now that's going to make a big difference. So I'm going to load that now back into my project. Again, overwrite the existing version and its parameter values. Okay, so then back in level 1, I'm going to just copy this desk a couple of times. I'll set it to be the smaller one so I've got a bit of room. Okay, so I'll just should be able to fit 2 copies. Okay, so back into my perspective view so you can see these. So I've got the 3 desks there. And so the first one, I'm going to select it, and you can see now, if I go to edit type, there's no material there anymore. Okay, so the material parameter isn't part of the type anymore, this type of desk, 1500 by 1000. It's in the element properties, so the properties for just this desk that's selected. So I can change it to be the green, I suppose. This one can be the red. And then the other one I'll just leave Great. Okay, but can you see how they're all the same type? These desks are all the 1500 by 1000 type or size, but they can each have a different material now because I've made it an instance parameter, not a type parameter. So just interesting about how you're going to manage your materials, and then as long as you've assigned a name, I was going to do a bit with 3ds Max, but I think I'll do that next week. As long as you've assigned a sensible name for your materials and you've broken them up in a sensible way, then no matter how you're going to render them, whether it's in Revit or 3ds Max, you can easily assign the materials because you've got the name there. Even the appearance you can set up later, but it's most important that you get the assignment and the way it's organised set up when you first start modelling everything, or even after you've modelled, if you go back and set that up, because if you're trying to break it up later when you've got a huge project, it just takes too long. Oh, the different, yeah. Yeah, sorry? Yeah. The different planes? Yeah, sorry, I mentioned that. Yeah, so I'm going to do that now. So, okay, so I want to make a, let's see, we'll do an angled desk on top of this desk, I suppose. So just something that's at an angle, and I'm just trying to think of something that will need a revolve as well to make it a bit more interesting for you. Yeah, I'll do a computer monitor, a monitor stand. Yeah, that'll work really well. Okay, so I'll do a little monitor stand to go with this desk then, and that'll be a good thing to show you. Lots of modelling operations actually. So back to level 1, and then edit family, and then maybe in the 3D view I'll do as much of this modelling as I can. So I'll do I suppose a little arm that comes up, and it'll need to have a sort of an angled, or will I just do a circular profile to keep it simple? Yeah, I'll just do a circular profile, and then we'll have the monitor stand sitting on that at an angle. So in the front view, yeah, I'll set up a reference plane. And do I even need this? Yeah, just to keep it simple, I'll set these up for you. So the reference plane there, and then I'll do one in the left view as well. So you can probably tell already, when you're drawing things in different planes, especially at different angles, you need to draw lots of reference planes. That's the most important thing. Okay, so set up all the reference planes you think you need for the different orientations. And so this is where the arm's going to start, so I need those. And in plan now, you'll see where they intersect is where my arm would come from. And I've actually got that on the wrong side. I want it on the left-hand side. Okay, so that's the first thing. I'm going to start from that intersection there. So I've got those two reference planes for that. And now I'm going to select this plane. That's the plane I'm going to be drawing on initially. So I'm going to give it a name and call it monitor bracket or something. Okay, and that's really important. When you start working in different planes, to be able to draw on them, you need to give them a name. Okay, so then if I go to my left view, I can draw on that plane. So I'm just going to draw a sweep. But I'm going to use set. So I'll click on sweep to begin with. And you can see it hasn't asked me to change planes or to pick a plane. If you're working in a project, this will happen. It'll ask you to pick a plane, but you've got to remember in a family, you've got to let it know that you want to change planes. Okay, so you've got to use set. And then you can choose any plane that you've named from the list there. If you haven't given it a name, you can't choose it. Okay, so monitor arm bracket is the one I've named. And then I can draw my path. So I'm just going to sketch a path. And let's see if we come up. So if I'm just going to come up and then across, and then and then up again. So that's basically the shape of my monitor arm. And then in the draw panel, I'm going to use fillet arc. And I think this one I'll just do by eye. So I'm just going to click on the 2 lines and then use the cursor to set a radius. So something like that. And then another one over here. So I've got sort of a rounded arm. And then I'll finish that path. So now to draw the profile, you just need to click Edit Profile, and then it'll probably ask you to choose a different view. So I'm going to go to the 3D view. And then you can see my gizmo for my origin. I'm going to use circle there to draw my profile. Now, you can see the line weights are really heavy. Do you know what to do there? Not thin lines. Thin lines is okay, but you don't want to get into the habit of only using that. The main issue here is my scale. So I'm going to make that 1:5, and then you can see that's much clearer. So I'll just finish that. Oh, better check the radius first. So 15 mil. I'm going to make that 10, or maybe even 7.5. So that'll give me a 15 mil diameter. Okay, so I finished the profile, finished the path. So I finished the sweep, and there's my very basic arm. Now, if you look in plan, you can see that it's sitting on that reference plane that I made. Yep, sure.
Can you do it again? I didn't get one.
I've recorded it. This is all being recorded, yeah. I'm going to do the same sort of thing with the next one. Yeah. So if I go to rotate this now, notice how the arm goes with it. Okay, so that's the secret. That's the big difference between, say, Revit and AutoCAD, and even 3ds Max. In those programs, you set a grid or a plane to be drawing on, and you draw the object there. That's where the object stays. It doesn't know that it belongs to that grid. It's just that's where you happen to have drawn it in the first place. Revit, on the other hand, is managing these things for you. It's tying everything together, so that arm belongs to that reference plane. And so if I want to rotate it, that's no problem, because I can just rotate that reference plane. I won't be able to rotate the arm, though, because it needs to sit on that plane. All right, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rotate the reference plane, because I want that arm to be sitting around so that the monitor thing can be sitting in front of the person working. All right, so just with the regular rotate tool, I've only got the reference plane selected, so I'm going to rotate, and then I'm going to move this base point down to the intersection there, so it rotates around the, where the arm should be sitting. I'm going to start with my base angle in line with the reference plane. I'm going to bring that around to just by eye. Well, actually 45 is probably good. Now, you've got to watch out sometimes when you do this, the base point will change, and so manually now I'm going to move this sweep, and it's fine to do this because it's only going to move along that plane. You can see how it's locked to the plane, and so that's okay. I'm just going to move that back along, and so now in my 3D view, you can see I've got the arm there coming across at an angle. And so what I want to do now is get this sloping monitor stand, I suppose. So this is the part where it gets a little bit trickier, but hopefully it'll reinforce the things I was just showing you as well. Okay, so we've got a plane at an angle. I want to draw some more things on that plane.
So it follows your reference point.
Yep.
Line.
Yep. So I could have drawn them all at that original orientation and then rotated the plane. But at some point, you're going to need to draw on these planes at different angles. So what do? Well, one way is to draw a section that's parallel to that plane. Okay, so I'm going to draw a section by snapping to that plane. And then I'm going to nudge that section away, just using the arrows on the keyboard, so that I'm looking at that plane. Okay, so now I'm going to open up that new view. So notice I've got a new sections category with just the one section view. And I'm looking at my arm. So then, look, I don't really need to make another plane, but I'm going to make one anyway, just so that this is all clear to you. I'm going to make a reference plane, again, snapping to the top of this object. I'll just do it from the center, actually, just to get it rough. So I'm going to do this at the angle I want my monitor stand to be. So I don't know what the angle would need to be, I'm just going to guess. Okay, so that might be the angle I want for my stand. Probably wouldn't be sloping that much actually, but yeah, so let's rotate it. That's a bit silly. Okay, so notice I'm adjusting the base point so it rotates around something sensible. So maybe that's better for my plane. Okay, so I want to be drawing on this plane now. So again, I'm going to select it and then give it a name. So I'll call this monitor stand. So again, I can see that name in the viewport. Now, I'll just do a simple one to begin with. I'm going to do an extrusion from the side here. So I'm not drawing on this plane yet. If you're wondering what I'm drawing on, just go back to the plan view. I'm drawing on this plane. Okay, so that's the monitor arm bracket. And I'm going to draw on that surface, on that plane, looking at it in my section view. Okay, so back to the Home tab. I'm just going to do an extrusion first to keep it simple. And then here, because I've made this new section view, it doesn't know what plane I want to draw on yet. But I can always tell it now by choosing not monitor stand, but monitor arm bracket to begin with. I'm going to draw from the side. Okay, so I'm just going to click OK, and then draw an extrusion, following the reference plane. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so again, not worrying too much about dimensions. They're easy to change afterwards. The angle is the thing you need to get right. Okay, so again, sometimes it's better not even to join things. Come back and trim them afterwards. As long as you know the angle's right, it's all good. Okay, so here that's too thick for metal, so we'll make that 5 or so. And again, this one can be 5. So here, at the scale I'm working at, it's just getting a bit difficult, but at 1 to 5, that should all be fairly clear. So I'll just nudge this down, something like that. So that'd be the sort of thing that monitors in the old days would have sat on. Newer monitors have different mounting, but that's fine for an old one. So I'm just going to finish that and then show you in 3D what's happened. So it's got this shape, but if you look at it in plan, you can see it's going to one side from that plane that I was drawing on. So hopefully that makes it clear also what I was just doing, because you can see there the plane, and so the profile that I drew, the extrusion was on that plane, and then it extruded it to one side from there. So then I can adjust that. So if I wanted it to be centered on that plane, one way would just be to type in an extrusion end of say 200 and then an extrusion start of -200. Okay, so then we've got 200 either side. So I've got it centered there in the 3D view. You can see that. Okay, so now I might want something to sit on that stand. And then, and that's where it gets really interesting, but it's all achievable. So looking in the section view, you can see if I was to start looking at this plane from above, everything would be at an angle. Now I can, but you just need to decide how you're going to work. You can do a section in here, following that reference plane. Oh no, sorry, it's no, it's not the right type of family. No, sorry, you have to just, I think, with this kind of family, put up with the fact that you'll be drawing at an angle, but that's fine. So here, I'm looking from above. I'll change the line weight again so you can see what's happening. So I'll go to hidden line as well, and you can see there's the front of my stand at the angle. And so I'll just do a very simple extrusion on top of this, or maybe, I know, that's what I can do a revolve. Yeah, that'll be really good because I can do that underneath actually, and that'll look excellent. So in the, let's see, in the 3D view there, I'll just show you underneath. So I'm going to do a mounting under there, which will be a revolve, and so I'm going to draw that on the underside of this surface now. You might think, how am I going to do that? Well, it's definitely something you can do. So I've got the reference plane. I was going to use that originally to draw on the top. But I'm going to show you it's just as easy to draw on the bottom. Okay, and I'm going to do it in this 3D view. So now that I've got that surface there, I can just go to Home tab and then Set, and then pick a plane. So it's often good as a starting point to have reference planes that you've named, because you can choose them in the list here. So monitor stand, monitor arm bracket, they're the ones I've made. But you can always use pick a plane instead, okay, and then you can choose any surface. So I can choose the bottom of this stand, and now I'm drawing on that plane. If you want to see it, you can use show, and there you can see the grid, and if you orbit around, you'll see that it lines up exactly with the bottom of that. Okay, so that's where I'm drawing now. And so I'm going to keep going in the 3D view. I'm going to turn show off, and then revolve is what I want to use. So I'm going to go just by eye from the center of that stand, or arm I should say, and just do a straight line. And then I'm going to come out and change it to drawing an arc, and then bring that back so it's centered. That's about right. Trim. Okay, so it's a semicircle, in other words, just for a revolve, and then my axis line will just be a straight line following that center. Okay, so then all I need to do to finish that is check the start and end angle. So got to think about this, but it should be end 180. It might be end minus 180, but we'll find out. Yeah, minus 180. Okay, so there we are. Okay, so there's my semi or hemisphere underneath. So, I mean, I'm sure you'd realise you could always do a sphere and then cut it from the side, and that'd be a simpler way of doing it, but I just wanted to show you an example of something drawn on a plane that's at an angle to the ground. Okay, so I'll join those together just as a last finishing off thing. So join geometry.
Your revolve is solid inside, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you want it to be like, you know, like balls.
A sphere? Yeah, yeah. So all you do is change the angle. So here, that's a semicircle. If I change the end angle to 360, then it'll be a sphere. Okay, so I'll load that one back in now, but just remember the actually the reference plane there isn't tied to the desk. So you'd need to lock that to it somehow, and that would take a bit of setting up actually. How would I do that? Yeah, no, we'll look at doing that later. That's going to involve setting up some reference points, which I don't want to show you just yet. So I'll load that in as it is anyway, and you'll see it will bring in the monitor stand at least. Okay, so they're all now updated.
Did you apply all those different materials? No.
It did. Now see how it's, well, no, it's kept the original. See, it's kept the materials I assigned in the project,
But it
because
doesn't apply them to the monitor stand?
no, because I haven't done them yet.
Oh, right.
Yep. But the nice thing is kept those different colours for the desks because I set it as an instance parameter.
Yeah.
So that hopefully will help you a lot. But yeah, this means now when I take it into 3ds Max, all those assignments are going to come through. And it's also good if you can do the modelling in Revit and get everything nicely joined. They will render really well in 3ds Max as well because the geometry is going to be really clean. So anyhow, I'll finish that one there, otherwise it will never finish. So I'll just stop that.